10 miracles that science can't explain. Number 10. Naga fireballs. The Nile may be the longest and the Amazon the fastest, but only one river in the world shoots fire. That's the Mekong River in Thailand, which has become famous for launching balls of fire into the air every October, which, let's face it, is cooler than anything the Potomac has ever done. Some scientists have suggested that the explosion might be natural swamp gases such as phosphine igniting, but that theory ignores the fact that these gases are heavier than air, and so wouldn't shoot up into the air as the fireballs do. Local Buddhists have a different theory, that the fire is from a naga. This giant serpent from Buddhist mythology supposedly swims under the water's surface, breathing balls of fire into the sky. River dragons or not, scientists have no conclusive explanation for these spectacular river explosions. Number 9. Miracle of the Sun. When 3 children, Lucia, Jacinta and Francisco, went out to tend their family's sheep, they probably weren't expecting the Virgin Mary to spontaneously appear. But that's apparently what happened in the town of Fatima, Portugal in 1917. The Virgin Mary told them that she would reappear at the same spot in 6 months' time, on the 13th of October. Nice of her to give them a heads up. The children told their parents, and word soon spread. Of course, at this point, most people thought the children were lying, but a crowd of 70,000 locals gathered at the same location on October 13th, just in case. Sure enough, the apparition of Mary returned, announcing herself as the Lady of the Rosemary and urging locals to build a church on the site. Even stranger, the locals reported seeing a silver shimmering disc appear from behind the clouds. Some historians have suggested that the apparent apparition was a patch of light filtered through the clouds, but no one has any convincing evidence. And with 60,000 witnesses claiming to have seen the Virgin Mary, there's still no clear way to scientifically debunk this bizarre event. Number 8. Yogi hasn't eaten for 76 years. Prahlad Jani has no time for cheat days. In fact, the 88-year-old yogi claims not to have eaten or drunk anything since 1940. At the age of 7, Prahlad left his family to live on his own in the jungle. When he was 11, Prahlad had a religious experience and came to be a follower of the Hindu goddess Amba. It was around this time that he stopped eating, claiming that he could survive just on meditation and a spiritual life force that the goddess provided him. Okay, so at this point you're probably thinking that Prahlad is lying, and sure, the story seems so extreme that it's only natural to assume that this guy is scoffing pizzas and burgers on the sly. But in 2010, Indian military scientists actually performed an experiment on him, monitoring him 24 hours a day for 16 straight days. In that time, they didn't see Prahlad eat or drink anything. To this day, no one understands how this man could survive longer than a week without water, let alone 76 years. Number 7. Self-healing heart. In September 2012, Michael Crow was in a bad place. The second-year student at the University of Nebraska had just been told that his heart was suffering from severe inflammation and could only function at 10% capacity. He was put on a heart-lung machine, without which his heart would have stopped entirely. Michael desperately needed a transplant, but he'd also contracted a blood infection, meaning he'd die if they even attempted surgery. Only an hour after receiving this death sentence, something unbelievable happened. The left side of Michael's heart started beating on its own again. Then the right side did. Within a few days, his heart was working normally, and there was no sign of permanent damage. Doctors have no idea how such a medically unprecedented healing could have happened, with one saying, "We think it's a miracle." Crow's family agrees, crediting the shock recovery to excellent medical care and the amazing power of prayer. Number 6. Incorruptible corpses. Want the secret to looking fresh even years after you die? Then you need to ask St. Catherine Labouré. Okay, so maybe the saint doesn't look fresh exactly, but considering she died 140 years ago, we'll give her a pass. Following death, the human body tends to rot beyond recognition after a couple of months. Within a year, all that's usually left is a pile of bones. Yet St. Catherine is one of just numerous incorruptible bodies. Corpses of religious figures that have somehow managed to avoid decomposing. Another is St. Bettina Zita, who died in Italy in 1272. Her 745-year-old body can still be viewed in one piece at the Basilica of San Frediano in Italy. Perhaps the best preserved is Russian Buddhist Dashi Dorzo Itigilov, who died 80 years ago in 1927. His body has been described as looking how it should 36 hours after death. Number 5. Mysterious voice. On the 9th of March 2015, Jennifer Grosbeck was driving across northern Utah with her baby when she suddenly lost control. Skidding off the road, the car flipped and landed upside down in the Spanish Fork River. The windows all blew out and the roof collapsed, killing Jennifer instantly. It's thought that the car sat there for as long as 14 hours before an angler spotted the wreckage and called for help. Police and firefighters arrived on the scene and started trying to pry the doors open. It was at this point that 5 of the rescuers heard a woman's voice crying out, "Help me, help us." When they finally got the car open, they found Jennifer's long dead body and her 18-month-old child unconscious next to her. After recovering the baby, the police and firemen all agreed that they'd heard the mysterious bleeding. As one officer noted, "We heard a voice, a distinct voice. It was kind of eerie." People in stressful situations sometimes imagine hearing things, but for 4 officers to share the same hallucination seems unlikely. Even creepier, their body camera footage also seemed to pick up the same muffled sound. Some have claimed that the voice was that of an angel, guiding the officers in their rescue. Number 4. Therese Neumann. Until 1918, Therese Neumann had been living a perfectly normal life in 20th century Bavaria. However, in 1918 things suddenly changed, after she fell from a stool while putting out a fire at her uncle's farm. The fall resulted in numerous brain injuries, which blinded and partially paralysed Therese. Skip forward 4 years and Therese was sick, bedridden and desperate. Desperate enough to pray to Therese of Lisieux, who was being beatified in Rome. On that exact day, Neumann's blindness was cured. Coincidence? It certainly seems so, until 2 years later when she prayed to the same saint on the day she was being canonised. This time, her paralysis cleared up. By this point, Therese had got the message, and when she was diagnosed with appendicitis that same year, she knew exactly who to pray to. Again, she was miraculously cured. From this point, Therese's story only gets stranger. From Good Friday in 1926 onwards, she would spontaneously start bleeding from the hands and feet every Easter, developing mysterious wounds where Jesus's had been. Local priests caring for her claim that, while bleeding, this illiterate Bavarian peasant would speak fluent Aramaic. Therese Neumann died in 1962, and to this day no one has been able to explain the strange life she lived. Number 3. Woman returns from the dead. Ruby Graupera Casimiro is a remarkable woman. In November 2014, she was taken to hospital after she started going into labour. So far, so normal. But shortly after giving birth, Ruby's heart suddenly stopped. The doctors scrambled to help her, knowing that humans can't normally survive more than 5 minutes without a pulse. But they couldn't get her heart going again. Ruby lost all the colour in her body and started turning rigid. Despite 3 hours of trying to restart her heart with defibrillators, no one could revive her. 45 minutes after her pulse disappeared totally, doctors had no choice but to pronounce her dead. That's when Ruby's pulse miraculously returned as her heart started again of its own accord. Medical experts were baffled, finding no scientific explanation for her sudden resurrection. Almost as amazing is her recovery, which shows no signs of permanent damage to her brain despite her spending so long without oxygen. Ruby herself credits God and says that, while dying, she saw spiritual beings guiding her. Number 2. Liquefying blood. You might think that after you're dead, your days of having to perform miracles are over, but it didn't work out that way for St. Januarius, a Catholic bishop who passed away in 305 AD. Right after he died, a woman named Eusebius decided to save 2 samples of his blood in vials. If you think that's weird, well, that's because it is pretty weird. But what's even stranger is that his blood seems to be able to do impossible things. Blood typically clots 15 minutes after leaving the body, congealing into a solid paste, but the blood of St. Januarius will spontaneously melt back into a liquid 3 times a year. There are records of this unexplained transformation dating back at least as far as 1382, and thousands of Catholics still gather to witness the bizarre feat. The blood liquefies so regularly that years when it doesn't are seen as cursed. In 1939 the blood stayed solid, and World War II broke out soon after. That doesn't bode well for 2017 because the blood has still failed to liquefy this year. Scientists can't explain how such a change is possible, although some have accused the Church of faking the ceremony for centuries. Number 1. Lourdes healings. Apparently the Virgin Mary likes to travel. In 1858, long before she was spotted messing with the sun in Portugal, she apparently appeared in front of French peasant Bernadette Soubirous and told her to start digging. Soubirous did, and uncovered a spring there. That spring went on to become the famous Lourdes Grotto, whose waters are credited with seemingly impossible healing properties. Even though scientific examinations have found nothing remarkable about the water itself, over 7,000 people have claimed that their ailments miraculously disappeared after drinking or bathing in it. This may seem far-fetched, but the Lourdes Medical Board has confirmed as many as 70 of these miracle healings, suggesting that the water does seem to have some sort of curative power. The confirmed healings include several stories of the waters curing visitors with multiple sclerosis, cancer and organ failure. In one case in 1940, a woman named Yvonne Fournier experienced movement returning to her arm, which had been paralysed after she got it caught in a machine belt at the factory she worked in. So that was 10 miracles that science still can't explain. Which one shocked you the most? Do you think you can explain some of these? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to restore your faith in science, be sure to check out 10 biblical miracles explained by science, playing now.